Well, let me ask you a simple question. Do you think the news you watch every day is completely true? Or is someone deciding what you should see and what you should never see? You see, throughout history, governments have always understood one powerful thing. If you control information, you control people's beliefs. And if you control beliefs, you control politics, wars, and even history itself. Now, before we go deeper, let's be fair. Not all journalists lie. Not every news organization spreads propaganda. But history shows something very interesting. During wars and major political crises, media and governments often work very closely together. Sometimes to protect national security, sometimes to influence public opinion, and sometimes to control the story. So today we are going to explore something fascinating. Do governments use media to control what we believe? And to understand that, we need to look at history. Well, you see, one of the most famous examples happened during the Vietnam War. In the early years of the war, many American media outlets supported the government's narrative. The government said the war was necessary to stop communism. But something interesting happened in the late 1960s. Journalists began showing real footage from the battlefield. Dead soldiers, destroyed villages, civilian suffering. For the first time, millions of people saw the true cost of war on their television screens. Public opinion suddenly changed. According to surveys from the Pew Research Center, support for the war dropped sharply after media coverage showed the harsh reality. This is when governments around the world realized something very important. Media could either support a war or destroy public support for it. Now fast forward to another famous example, the Iraq War. Before the war started, governments in the United States and its allies told the world that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Many major media outlets repeated this claim. The story was everywhere: television debates, newspaper headlines, political speeches. But after the invasion, those weapons were never found. Later investigations showed that the intelligence used to justify the war was deeply flawed. They had trusted government sources too quickly. A study from the Columbia Journalism Review later argued that media organizations failed to question the narrative strongly enough. You see, this shows something interesting. Sometimes the media is not directly controlled, but it can still follow the government narrative without questioning it enough. But here is where things get even more complicated. In some countries, the government directly controls major media networks. For example, in China, most large news organizations operate under state supervision. And in Russia, major television networks are closely aligned with the government. This means the government can strongly influence how international events are presented. Now compare that with Western countries. There, media organizations are mostly private companies, but they still rely on government officials for information during crises. So even without direct control, influence still exists. Now let's talk about something happening right now, the Russia-Ukraine war. The war is not only being fought with tanks and missiles, it is also being fought with information. Russia has its version of the story. Ukraine has its version. Western media often supports Ukraine. Russia's state media supports Moscow's narrative. And millions of people around the world are trying to figure out which version is closest to the truth. This is called information warfare. Experts say modern wars are now fought on three fronts: the battlefield, the economy, and the media space. Now here comes the big question. Are people aware of this? Well, according to surveys from the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism, global trust in news has been falling. In many countries, less than 40% of people say they trust the news most of the time. That is a huge drop compared to the 1990s. Why? Because people now see many competing narratives: government narratives, media narratives, social media narratives, and sometimes completely false information spread online. But here is something interesting. Social media was supposed to solve the problem. Platforms like YouTube, Meta platforms, and X allowed ordinary people to share information. But that also created a new problem. Fake news spreads much faster online. In fact, a famous study from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology found that false news spreads 6 times faster than true news on social media. Why? Because shocking stories travel faster than boring facts. So, what does the future look like? Well, information battles will only grow stronger. Artificial intelligence can now create fake videos. Deepfake technology can imitate politicians. Governments, media companies, and tech platforms will all compete to control the narrative. And that means something very important for you, the viewer, the reader, the citizen. In the future, understanding world politics will require something more than just watching the news. It will require thinking critically, comparing multiple sources, and asking one simple question every time you see a big headline. Who benefits from this story being told this way? Because sometimes the truth is clear, and sometimes it is hidden, and sometimes the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So now I want to ask you something. Do you think media tells us the full truth about global events? Or do you think governments influence the story more than we realize? Tell me what you think in the comments. Because in today's world, understanding information might be just as important as understanding power.